teachers, questioned, handcuffed, or worse, simply for being who they are in places they're not supposed to be. This moment in the cafe was just one more reminder of a deeper truth that for some, no badge, no job, no level of achievement is ever enough to override the color of their skin. And still, he said nothing. He let the silence speak, because silence, in moments like that, can say everything. The cafe never quite returned to normal after he left. The air remained tense, thick with the residue of what had just happened. People whispered. Some stared at the door he had walked through. Others simply looked down, unsure of what to do next. But the man who had just been forced to the ground wasn't shaken because it was new. It was because it wasn't. This moment, this kind of confrontation, had a history that stretched far beyond the walls of a small coffee shop in Spartanburg, South Carolina. What happened to him was shocking, but it wasn't rare. And that's the real tragedy. He wasn't just a victim of one officer's poor judgment. He was part of a pattern, a deeply embedded reality, in which black men, even those carrying federal badges, are treated with suspicion before they're ever treated with respect. His story was personal, but it echoed the lives of countless others who have lived through similar humiliations. We've seen it before. In 2009, Henry Louis Gates Jr., a Harvard professor and one of the most respected black scholars in the country, was arrested trying to get into his own home. A neighbor saw him struggling with his door and called the police. They didn't see a professor. They didn't see a man returning home from a trip. They saw a threat, an intruder, an outsider. In 2015, a black Secret Service agent in plain clothes was tackled by local police outside the White House. He showed his badge too. It didn't matter. His job didn't protect him from assumptions made in a split second, assumptions that nearly cost him his life. There are dozens of stories like these. Most never make the news. Some end quietly, some end in tragedy, and they all share one brutal truth. The badge doesn't protect you if you're black. The suit doesn't either. Not the education, not the status, not the title. Because respectability doesn't erase racism. It just masks it for a moment until someone decides it's time to strip it away. This is the reality that so many live with every day, that no matter how accomplished you are, how carefully you speak, how closely you follow the rules, you can still be seen as dangerous. You can still be brought down at gunpoint. You can still be forced to prove your humanity to people who already decided you don't have it. And maybe that's the cruelest part. The officer didn't just ignore the badge. He laughed at it, mocked it, because to him, it wasn't believable that a black man in that space, at that time, could possibly be someone important, could possibly be someone federal, someone official. That moment of disbelief is where racism hides best, not in shouting or slurs, but in the quiet refusal to accept black success as real. This story forces us to ask, what does it take for a black man to be believed in America? Apparently, more than a badge, more than a federal ID, more than a job protecting the highest office in the land. It forces another question, too. Why are white officers so quick to assume a black man is lying, even when he presents absolute proof? That officer didn't pause. He didn't investigate. He didn't even consider the possibility that the man was telling the truth. He went straight to the gun, straight to the ground, straight to violence, and still, no apology, no suspension, no accountability. That's not just bias, that's structure. That's a system doing exactly what it was designed to do. To our audience, especially our Black viewers, you already know this story. You've lived it, maybe not as a federal agent, but in other ways. You've been questioned in stores. You've seen people lock their car doors when you walk by. You've been pulled over and wondered if you'd survive the stop. This isn't theory for you, it's real. And to our non Black viewers, to those who want to be allies, this is the part where you listen, really listen, not to respond, not to debate, but to understand. Because too many times, when these stories are told, the question becomes, well, what did he do? But that's the wrong question. The right question is, why was he treated like that at all? We have to stop putting the burden on Black people to explain away their own abuse, to justify their own trauma, to dress better, speak softer, smile more, comply faster, as if any of that is a guarantee of safety. It's not. This is why we tell these stories. Not to re traumatize, but to reveal, to strip away the comfort of denial, to show that what happened in that coffee shop wasn't just a moment, it was a mirror, a reflection of a nation still struggling to face itself. And for the man at the center of it all, this wasn't just another bad day. This was another reminder that his accomplishments, his credentials, and his service could all be erased by a single officer's doubt. That's why the final line of this scene hits so hard, because it's not just about him, it's about every Black person who's ever had to live with the knowledge that no matter how much they achieve, it might never be enough in a world that refuses to see their worth. The suit didn't matter, the badge didn't matter. Only one thing did, and that is the problem. What happened in that Spartanburg coffee shop wasn't an isolated incident. It was the latest echo of a long, painful pattern, a pattern that stretches across decades, centuries even. You can't fully understand what happened to that man until you understand what America has always done to men who look like him. From the moment Black people were brought to this country, they've been under surveillance, not just by systems or technology, but by suspicion, by eyes that follow, by assumptions that trail behind every step. That suspicion didn't disappear after slavery. It didn't vanish after the civil rights movement. It simply evolved into new uniforms, new laws, new justifications. In the Jim Crow South, Black men were accused of crimes for simply walking too proudly. They were beaten for not stepping off the sidewalk when a white person passed, lynched for looking in the wrong direction or being in the wrong town after sunset. The rules were unspoken, but deadly, and above all, they were enforced by people with badges, people who were supposed to serve and protect. Fast forward to today, and while the rules may have changed on paper, the mindset in too many places has not. Black people are still viewed through a lens of danger, still followed in stores, still stopped without cause, still asked to prove they belong over and over again, even when they're the most qualified, even when they serve the very institutions questioning them. That's what makes this story so disturbing. This man wasn't a suspect. He wasn't breaking the law. He was the law, a Secret Service agent, a federal officer sworn to protect. And still, a local cop didn't believe him, laughed at him, tackled him, treated him as if he were pretending to be who he was. This isn't about one officer making a mistake. It's about a culture that trained him to assume the worst when he saw Black skin. A culture that taught him, consciously or not, that authority and professionalism don't come in that color. That someone like him couldn't be real, that the badge must be fake, that the danger must be present. And this suspicion doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's reinforced by media, policy, and precedent. Think about how black people are portrayed in the news, especially black men: armed, aggressive, non compliant, even when they're none of those things. The language shapes perception. Every headline that demonizes, every photo that dehumanizes, adds to the pile of doubt officers bring with them when they respond to a scene. Even Hollywood plays its part. For years, black characters were shown as criminals, thugs, sidekicks, rarely as agents, doctors, CEOs, or presidents. So when someone like this man walks into a coffee shop wearing a suit and carrying a Secret Service badge, it clashes with what many people have been subconsciously taught to expect. That clash becomes suspicion. That suspicion becomes danger. It's also important to recognize this isn't just about race, it's about power. Because what the officer did wasn't just disrespectful, it was domination, a show of force, a message: I don't care who you say you are, I decide who you are. That's what's so dangerous about unchecked policing. It gives individuals the power to rewrite someone's reality in real time. And in America, that power often leans hardest onto black bodies. This is where the conversation about implicit bias and systemic racism comes in, not as buzzwords, but as real frameworks to understand how something like this can keep